Hi everyone! Thank you so much for joining me for this last lesson in our pastel series. My name is Amy Pearce Stone of Her Art from the Attic. Be sure to find me on Facebook and YouTube. This month, the month of May 2017, I am working with Strathmore paper to teach you some techniques with pastels. We've done 2 oil pastel lessons to kind of introduce us into the world of pastels, and our final 2 lessons have been soft pastels. So this final lesson, we are going to talk about how to do a portrait with soft pastels, and this is the one that I'm going to be showing you. There are so many different ways to do portraits. I'm going to do a portrait that is pretty photorealistic and true to the color tones that you find in certain skin types. But you can really get creative. If we had more weeks, I would show you some fun color combos for skin where you're using like every color of the rainbow and really turning it into something spectacular and special and unique. But we're going to stick with this today, and hopefully you'll learn something. For this project, I'm going to use Strathmore's Artagain paper because it's so smooth, and I want her skin tone to be just extra smooth because she's a baby and her skin is so delicate. I'm going to choose a gray paper because it's a nice natural undertone of the portrait as it is. And then of course I've got my Unison Soft Pastels, and this is their portrait set. So they have nailed down the colors that you would find in most portraits, and I think that you'll find that they did a pretty good job. To aid me in some of the details of the portrait, I'm going to use really high quality soft pastel pencils. These do not work like colored pencils. You kind of feel like you're painting with them. It's awesome. And then I've got my paper towels and my water. My water I'm constantly cleaning off my fingers so as not to transfer pigment that I don't want. And my favorite blending tools, my fingers. Now you see around the gray paper, which is what we're going to be drawing on, I've got reference photos. I've got the actual photo, I've got a grayscale photo, I've got a line photo, and I've got a color map over the photo and a color map without the photo. These all help me figure out exactly how to do the portrait. And some of you may find some of these superfluous, but like the gray and black ones help me see the lines. The colors I use to test before I use them. And then of course just the photo I use to see that it looks like what I want it to look like. This is where you're going to love the pastel pencils, how they just glide on smoothly. Choose one of your darker undertones, maybe the darkest undertones of the lightest part of your pastel creation. So I grabbed red, a darker red, and I am just sketching out the portrait. And you can either eyeball it or you can trace it, whatever you want. But use one of the darker undertones. Don't worry about shading too much right now. We're just getting the basic outlines. As soon as I am done sketching out the portrait, I'm going to grab close to my lightest tone of the skin. I like to start in the skin because I feel like it's easier to work from there outward, but some people prefer to start with the background. You just figure out what you like. I'm going to lay down the pastel and I'm just kind of rubbing it, getting a good concentration of it wherever I want. I'm going to brighten that up with white, and I'm doing this because I didn't quite have a light enough hue in the color palette, which is okay because the combination of this light pink with the white made it the color that I wanted. So, and you just mix it right there on the paper. You don't mix it beforehand, you mix it right on there. And if you have a good soft pastel, it should be easy peasy. So laying down again the lightest colors, and now I am just matching. What I'm doing is I'm testing out the pastels and I'm matching the tones. So then I take this orangish pink, kind of a salmon color, and I'm doing some of the mid-tones. Now her face, it's got some pink and red tones, and it's got some kind of yellow and brown tones. So I am just laying out very roughly where all of those are. Not rough with the pastel, but you know, just a rough idea of where all these things are. And then I'll take my favorite blending tool, my fingers, and as soon as I've laid out all this color, I will start softly blending. Remember that you can always add more pastel. So if you're not quite sure if you're putting it where it needs to be, then just put a little bit and then you can always add more. But layer, 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 and blend, blend, blend if you desire a smooth texture. You don't have to use your fingers. I prefer my fingers because I can have 10 different blending tools at once, and I can go back and forth rapidly without having to clean them. But when I do clean them, I clean them off really quickly just with a little bit of water, and then they're ready to use again as soon as they're dry. Whereas if I use a paper towel or a blending stump or a cloth, then once it's used, it's unusable again. Okay, so as you can see, I am just continuing to layer, like I said, and I'll start adding some of the details as we go along. And some of those details I will put down with the pastels, like you see there, and some I will use the pastel pencils. For the finer detail, I'm going to use the pastel pencils because it's really hard to get that precise line with the big chunky pastels. Not impossible, but when you're dealing with a portrait and the tiniest skew of the nostril or the shape of the eye or whatever, the tiniest skew can make it look a little ski-wampus. So the pastel pencils will just give you a little more precision. I am layering, layering, blending, blending. I'm wanting there to be this nice, almost yellow olive skin tone, but then she's got these beautiful pink cheeks that are lighter. I don't want the olive tone of her skin to be too pronounced, so as you can see, I'll continue to make it lighter and lighter and a little more pink here and there. So now I'm going the eyes, and the eyes, I'm going to start with the brighter parts of the eyes surrounding the iris, and that's actually more gray and lighter blue, and now I'm just laying in some lighter blue in the middle of the eyes and outlining the pupils with a darker blue. You could also use purple. That's a little bit closer to the actual colors, but I'm wanting to keep as many of the colors cohesive that I can. Now I'm using the blue pastel pencil to blend. I'm actually using the blue to not only put some blue into the eyes, but also to blend the pupil into the blue. Now you can notice that the pupil, I have laid down a really dark black and then blue over it. They're not perfectly round because there is a reflection that is causing the pupils to kind of disappear. Now I'm adding some black where I want it darker, but I don't want to leave it black because that's too hard. I will then put the blue over the black to make it just a very deep blue, but I don't want it to look black anywhere. If you zero in on it, the black is just an aid for darkening in this situation. I could have used other colors too, but that was it. Pretty easy to do with the pupils and right under the eyelids there. Okay, now I'm going to create the highlights, and I'm going to start by using my white pencil. Just like I didn't want there to be harsh black lines, I don't want there to be harsh white lines. I'm going to use the white to put in the highlights and then blend it with the blue underneath or the other colors to dull it down a little bit. And I'm going to put some red lining. I'm going to reintroduce the lines around the eyes and the eyelids and put a little red here and there back in lips using the pencil. And this time I'm using some strokes that are a little more harsh, and I'll go and smooth them out later, but this is where I'm going to get some of the detail. So I don't want to smooth out all of those, especially in the lips. So to dull down the red, I'm going to use green, because this will give me a slight dull, and I don't want it to be a really dark red. but I also don't want it to be a super bright red. So I first used green, and now I'm using a dark yellow to go over those lines and blend them into the skin around them. I'm going to put some of that same color into the eyes. I'm going to put some red into the eyes, into the colorful part of the eyes, because I really want the eyes to just sparkle and shine. None of our eyes are one solid color. All of our eyes have many different colors in them. Now let's just go on to the coat and the hat. I've got this dark burgundy maroon color, and that's going to be my darkest undertone, and then I'll add some cranberry red color to the hat, to the coat. Then I'll use the same pink that I used in the face. Using the same colors that I used in the face and that I'm using in the coat and the hat will help make the painting a little bit more cohesive and feel like it's all connected. And now I'm just doing some quick jaggedy strokes, so they're little lines, creating the illusion of her furry coat. And so I started with the darker, now I'm on the lighter, and I am going to add a little bit of the background before I continue on with the coat, so that I can draw those strokes of her coat into the background. And in hindsight, I wish I had let more of the paper show through as the background instead of completely covering it. Now I'm just adding more of the darker tones, undertones of the coat, and the mid-tones with that cranberry, some of the lighter ones. I'll put some white in there. Just layer, layer, layer here. This will really help you get the illusion of fur. And I am just stripe, 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 stripe. Quick flick of the wrist to get those little lines. And I'm using the edge of the pastel and turning it on a diagonal so it just gets a sharp line. Then I'm going to add some of the colors into the hat. The same cranberry that I used in the coat. And then I'm going to add a few colors like orange. And I've got the green. See, the undertone of the paper is the perfect color for the hat and even the eyes and coat. And I'm just doing I'm doing lines in the hat too, but they're kind of curved, short lines to give the illusion of the knit. There's little tricks. I'm not going to go spot by spot and draw every highlight of every bump in the knit, although I could get some pretty fine detail doing that. But I'm going to call it done here. Maybe add a few extra touches. Blend the background. Could have left it chunky and been just fine. Take down all my reference. Take down my reference kit and just look at what I've done, and we're done. What do you think? It's beautiful. It is always amazing to me how the right combination of paper and pastels can give you this beautiful color, vibrancy, smoothness. It's like, I love it. I don't even know how to explain it. Thank you guys so much for joining me this whole month. I hope you enjoyed spending time with me. I hoped you learned something. I learned something from some of you. And yeah, thank you. Please find me on Facebook. My name is Amy Pearce Stone, and my company is called Her Art from the Attic. So I hope to see you there. Thanks again, Strathmore. Bye.